Well, welcome to a new Harry's Garage video, and this one is going to be one of the annual roundups of what happened in the garage, what costs were incurred running this fleet of around 35 cars and bikes and various toys we have in here. What a year 2020 turned out to be as well. Best laid plans at the 2019 didn't quite happen. We got some trips in, we did some of the planned things with the cars, but like everyone else, and the world was turned upside down as COVID went global and we all had to adapt to a new way of living. Well, that happened here in the garage obviously as well. One thing I have to say, I thank you so much for all the support in 2020 and the comments, and we've been putting more videos out this year and it seems to have gone down very well, and I'm hugely grateful for the support you gave us. I think we're on for about 27 million views in 2020, which is way up. I think we had 12 million in 2019. Anyway, going back to the garage. What happened in the garage? What were the costs incurred? Well, what left the garage? One car left the garage in 2020, and that was my little Alfa Duetto. We'd enjoyed that trip on to the Mille Miglia in 2019, done that engine rebuild, but I found it battling with the Elan and the new Lancia that had rocked up and the Esprit. The Duetto was just like one too many convertibles. We got the Project 7 here as well, and I had someone who really wanted it, and it sold like immediately. I think it was 40-something thousand pounds. So sort of sorry to see it go, because it was such a good example, that one. I haven't seen a better one, better prepped than that one in the silver, and we had that engine rebuild as well. 3 bikes joined us. No other cars joined us in 2020, but 3 quite unusual bikes. A Honda CBX 6-cylinder. I bought that Kawasaki Z1300 last year, want to get that. A Moto Guzzi and an Africa Twin Marathon. We'll have a look at those in a moment. Just want to get back to the garage. Right, the other big cost this year obviously is insurance. I sort of mentioned this. I'm with Footman James again this year. They are, I know, a channel sponsor, but it is completely separate. And this year's insurance was £7,714. I don't know why. It was £400 cheaper than last year. Maybe it was a little bit of no claims after the Mercedes that went through last year, the repair after the fire damage to the Mercedes SL 350. But it covers a lot of, it's 35 vehicles. I think it might be 36 now, because that Africa Twin is a new one since I did the policy. And it's 4 people on it, and I can drive all the cars. It's the newer cars that actually cost the most to insure on the group policy for whatever reason. All the same with all insurance policy. If you have a modern performance car, they're the ones you pay 10 times more than perhaps you would pay for a Countach, being a classic, because you just don't do the miles in it. So that's insurance. But what did we do to each individual car, service-wise or repairs or rebuilds? Let's go and have a closer look at each one. Right, the Jaguar, my XJ Coupe. I didn't do a lot of miles in this one. My son actually did quite a few trips in this one this year. It is mad, this thing, with its sort of hot rod suspension. In 2018, XJ Restorations put the trick suspension on it, fully adjustable, lower diff on it. This is a manual XJ Coupe, if you've seen it. Makes the most glorious sound. Didn't spend a bean on it in 2020. It's just typical of the year, but I think it's done about 400 miles or something like that. Rolls-Royce, sort of pretty similar story. 2020 meant we didn't do very many miles in this either, but they're all very memorable miles. It's the going to pub car type of thing, trips. You can all pile in it. No seat belts in the back, so you can get quite a few people in it for very local journeys. But yeah, no adventures this year. The one that had the big spend on it was, of course, the Lamborghini Espada. And I'd started this in August last year, and it finally just came back in time to go to the London Concours, which was in August. And it was literally, picked it up on the truck, next day down into London, the Royal Artillery Club in City of London, crazy venue, and put it on the field. I was so chuffed. It looked so, I mean, the engine and the detail on it, it looked ace. And then came judging day, chucked it down with rain. It was an absolute monsoon of the day. But then it won a gong, it won its class. And I was just overjoyed, complete surprise. I just wanted to get it there as sort of it's always good to have a deadline to work to, and that was the deadline. And then the visitors to the show gave it best car as well. So it won 2 gongs on its first outing. And since then, I've been running around in it. It's a bit grubby, actually. I was in it yesterday doing some late Christmas shopping, buying some picture frames and things like that. The spend, I actually mentioned it last year, was 30,000 or thereabouts to do the engine rebuild. There are a few more jobs doing. It's come back, and I have a really noisy fan inside, ventilation fan, which is driving me nuts. And also, the ride handling, the dampers had like completely shot. I brought it back, and it just wasn't right. And when we actually parked it next to other Espadas in Ian Tyrrell's workshop, this sat lower than the others. So what's happened, they've gone off for full rebuild and new springs being made. Actually, I think they're retempering the old springs, but they have come back and they look like new. I'm waiting for that to be done. Ian Tyrrell very kindly just put a spare set he had on this car, and it is way better than it was. In 2021, I think I might change the tyres on it. I'm still not quite happy with the steering on it, but boy, have we got a healthy engine. And we were meant to be going on a trip in November this year, and then that lockdown came and we couldn't go. Let's hope 2021 is a bit kinder to the Espada and doing some trips. Now, Project 8, this mad Jaguar that I am now 2 and a bit years into owning, it just gets me, this car. It's silly. No one actually needs a 600 and something horsepower 4-door Jaguar. And then you go drive it and you think, oh my Lord, that is quite an amazing thing. In 2020, it had a service and it was £424. It then also went back for a brake fluid change, because I do quite a lot of track stuff and things, and I like to change the brake fluid, and it uses some peculiar brake fluid Jaguar specify, and we had to wait for that to come in, and that was £207 to change the brake fluid. While it was in, though, it turned out there was a recall notice on the first 10 Project 8s that left the factory, and this being number 1 was part of that recall, and they replaced the spring damper units on the front and the dampers at the rear. Just the damper units are 2,000 and something pounds each. So it was over, I think it was £12,000 worth of parts to replace the dampers on this, and different bump stops on the front. And I went down to have a look at them. I've never seen dampers that cost this much money. And they look, they're motorsport, they're just beautiful, and they're aluminium, and you pick up this great big rear shocker and it's like light as a feather. They are awesome things. And the other surprise was they're solidly mounted as a sort of rose joint thing at the bottom of them. There was a slight rattle coming from the far corner on this one, and maybe that was why they were changed. They wasn't specific. There was no direction why they were being changed, but yeah, it's got a set of brand new spring dampers on it. It hasn't done a huge amount of miles. We had some fun at Prescott Hill Climb. I actually drove it down to Goodwood this week. Because I was driving the Ferrari Roma. You'll see that video out in a moment. But one thing I have done, and that is swap the tyres on it. I'm lucky that I've got 2 sets of wheels, and I always worried running through the winter with those Cup 2 tyres, the Michelin Cup 2 tyres. Absolutely brilliant track day type tyre, and what the car's developed for. But during the winter, they just worry me whether they clear water as well as a normal tyre. You know they don't. So to make sure I can continue using it, I've put a set of Michelin Pilot Sport 4S's on. It's their new generation tyre, which is just one down from the Cup 2, to see how I go for the winter. So far, I've been hugely impressed. They just give that extra bit of confidence in grotty conditions. Poor old Project 7. It's had not a very good 2020. Again, we had a trip planned in this off to Portugal this year, and that just disappeared because of the lockdown, and then obviously travel in Europe being a bit tricky. I had this service as well, £441 to service this car. I can't get over how cheap it is to service these Jaguar performance cars. If you're used to Aston Martin and Ferrari and other, Maserati was another one, just £400 for a 2-year service on this. I mean, Porsche are very good at this as well with the 911. It makes such a difference to the ownership experience. So this car, unfortunately, I looked at its MOTs and just checked its mileage now. It has done 144 miles in 2020. So it's really suffered with the COVID lockdown, that one. Right, the Ferrari Testarossa and the Lamborghini Countach. I just love owning the pair of these and having them sat here and sort of, I'm better than you are, no, I'm more excited than you are, and having the two completely different experience of these 80s supercars from the two big rivals, Ferrari and Lamborghini. Again, no costs at all on these two in 2020, but then it didn't really do many miles. We've used this one a little bit around trips. I sort of use the Testarossa. If we're going out for a meal or something, we all going to friends, quite often take the Testarossa because it's a bit silly and it makes the most glorious noise. You just want to bottle that flat 12 sound. It's not harsh, it's distinctive, and it's just ace. It's why we love engines. And I was discussing this with Chris Harris. He's got 512, TR512, the later one of these. And we're saying it's everything you want a Ferrari to be. It's the sound, the distinctive styling, that beautiful steering wheel, no airbag on it, beautiful symbol, Ferrari in the middle of the wheel, gated gear change. And yet it's, I don't know what that's worth now, 80, 100,000 pounds, something like that. So it's a real favourite. While the Countach is nuts. And I have to say, I don't think it's done very many miles. I don't think it's done 200 kilometres this year. But I had such a memorable trip in this. I was helping someone. I had to give a lift back to someone who was just delivering a car. And I went in this and then went down one of my favourite bits of road. I can remember almost every gear change, every corner, because this bellowing car, this crazy car, just serves up drives that you can't believe. It's not very good. I wanted in 2020 just to sort a few things out, and I'm aiming to do it in 21. It's got a really sticky throttle action that I find annoying, and it's got a noisy gearbox. So maybe in 21 we'll do some work on that, but it's still mad as they come, but that's why it stays. Even though we don't drive it much, you just look at it and you have a drive like I had a couple of months ago, yeah, that stays. And then we get to the Lotus Esprit. Wow, did that have an exciting 2020. Last roundup video I hinted that we're going off to do that a trip in it. We went out to Austria and went to see where that Spectre Defender sat on top of the hill, and then relived the Bond movie For Your Eyes Only, and went into Cortina with this car and did some of those things. Mega trip, timing was perfect because it was all just before lockdown. Poor old Italy. The resort we were in was closed down not many weeks after we were there. We didn't know this COVID storm that was about to hit us at that point. But it didn't put a foot wrong. We didn't spend a bean on it. Didn't even need any oil or water when we got home. 2,500 miles I've done in this car in 2020. And then I entered it in the Salon Privé event. They wanted some 80s supercars there. Spree, look there. It looked unbelievable on the field. Richard Tipper of Perfection, he gave it the once over before we went there. And then it picked up a gong. I couldn't get over. I didn't expect anything really. It was just a great day out, good fun to enter an event, especially all the lockdowns, etc. But the Duke of Marlborough found out about the story in Octane. Well, he knew about it, and then saw the car on the field. And he says, "I'm going to give that car my Car of the Year award." And that's what this great big cup is that I got awarded at Salon Privé. So the Spree has had a mega year in 2020. We get to the little Lancia Fulvia 1600, the Zagato Sport Edition. This arrived in 2019. It wasn't running that well, and I took it to someone at the beginning of the year, Bradley and Son they are, and they've got a rolling road. They're quite local to us. And they just worked magic on this car. I got some air socks on it. I wanted to put it on trumpets because the air clean on this sort of kills the sound on it. Such a funny little car, this thing. And they tuned it, put a carb kit on it, then put it on the rolling road, and the little thing was producing within 1 horsepower of its declared horsepower. I drove it out of there and it was mega. It was the best £228 I've ever spent on a car, and it sings now, revs round through the gears, and I've had a ball, and I've actually surprised myself how many miles I've done in this car. This has done about 1,400 miles this year, which for 2020 and lockdowns, all the rest of it, is quite a lot. It's sort of just a joyous, fun little thing. It only cost 20-something thousand pounds. And yeah, it's just one of those fun cars that has exceeded all expectations, and particularly after its little engine tune-up and just the sound of it. It's a bit like my Elan here, that again always surprised me. This is a car I've owned since '93. No cost at all with this car again. I sprayed all that special spray I use underneath to protect it from rust, run around in it all the time. I don't deserve this car, it just works and drives superbly. And I actually drove a couple of Lotus Elans that the hairpin company had, and I realised just how special this one was. It's got a few tweaks on it. It's got slightly stiffer springs, and I've got slightly bigger brakes on it, which I put in 1993. It's just a joyous driving machine, and it tells you all about Lotus and lightweight, and this is 600 and something kilos. Makes all the difference when you drive. So that is a quick roundup of everything we did. The 500 hasn't had anything spent. I will come to that in a moment. And in total, £1,800 for all the servicing and stuff on the cars. Paid about £1,000 on the bikes. I was meant to be doing Sand Raiders in May 2020. That got cancelled obviously as well. I prepped the bikes for that. That was around £1,000 prepping those. So £2,800 plus the insurance of £7,714, grand total of £10,500 costs in 2020. I'm not including the Espada, which is around 30,000, because I mentioned that in 2019 is around 30,000, and it was about then. The only thing I've got to have is the shockers and the springs being done, but I haven't had the bill for that yet. That'll go into 21. So that's what happened in 2020 with these cars. So what we're going to do in 21? Well, I've already started to make some bookings. And one of the things I've always wanted to try, I know John at Bespoke Rallies, well, I've always quite fancied one of those sort of navigational type rallies, a bit like the Millimeter is now with the tubeless books, and you need to have the distance, etc. And I've entered their event in May 21, and it's the Pyrenees Rally. And it's which car to take? Well, I've plumped for the little Lancia. So this year, the next few weeks, this car is going to have an engine rebuild down at Day and White, so you're going to join us on as well, hopefully. We'll just have to see how this COVID and Tier 4s and what happens. But I really enjoyed doing the Espada, doing that rebuild, seeing how, you know, transforming the car, and you seem to like it on the videos as well. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to do the little Lancia. Because although it, you know, I've just said the engine is fantastic on it at the moment, it does leave a little smoke trail everywhere it goes, and you'll see little drops of oil underneath it. And if I'm going to be charging off to the Pyrenees and doing, you know, crazy things with it, do you know what, I'm going to rebuild its engine. So it's going down in a few weeks' time, and they're going to do some other little bits of work on it. I'm going to have 2 working wipers instead of 1 working wiper, that sort of thing. Rear springs, they think they're going to replace. We'll go round it, we'll have a look at it, put it on the lift and see what it... So you're going to follow us while we do the engine rebuild in 21 on that car, which I'm really excited about. The little Fiat 500, we might well do the engine on that. It's suddenly decided not to start. They're simple things. I cannot work it out. I've got spark, I've got fuel, it won't go. I suspect there's something wrong with a piston, actually. I think I've got a hold piston in it. I haven't done a compression test, but we'll do that. But it's not just the Lancia that's going to get some work in 21, because I've booked another car in for a bit of work as well. And that car's over here. But on the way, I just wanted to show you this. This is latest purchase. This is a Honda Africa Twin Marathon Edition, because when the Dakar was peak, these competed in 89 and 90, these bikes. They are so rare. It was the French Honda division who created 50 bikes that privateers could buy and then do the Paris-Dakar on. And this isn't one of them, this is a replica of one of them with the right bits on, because this is unattainable stuff. Quite a few of the bikes didn't actually come back from Dakar, but they were very competitive. This is peculiar, this little sump guard here that has toolbox on it, and then the mandatory drinking water extension here, because if you're doing the Dakar and you suddenly break for whatever reason, you're lost, you've got to have drinking water on it as part of the regulations, and that's what that tank is there. Other peculiar bits, you can see a sort of single seat on it rather than a big seat. And here, you've got to remember, this is before we had proper GPS and so on. You had to carry a radio beacon, and that went in there. So if you triggered that you were out of the rally, but a helicopter would try and find where you were. So that was the rescue beacon where that goes. This is a giant fuel tank all here. That's the filler up here. It also has a giant filler here. I believe the total capacity of all these tanks is 60 litres of fuel. Unheard of in a bike. But anyway, so that's going to just needs a little bit of work. I need to redo the tank, the liner in it and that sort of thing. Moto Guzzi TT65, quite a mad, rare bike, fun to ride, never seen one before, caught my eye, really quite like it. And then the Honda CBX 6-cylinder. Iconic bike. I just love the engineering on this and the 6 cylinders. It's got a non-standard exhaust on it. It's 6x6 exhaust. I've got a standard exhaust for it as well, and I might well put that on. But wow, what a machine this is. 105 horsepower from its 1000cc. Screams. There is no other sound like the Honda CBX. But the car who's going to get the most work in 2021 is the Jaguar XJ Coupe. My V12 manual finally is going to have the makeover it's deserved ever since I've owned it. It's going to change the colour on it. I've never liked the squadron blue. Other people like it, I don't. I think it dates it. But I love everything else about this car, and it deserves the work. And I was so impressed with XJ Restorations, who did the chassis work on it. Keith Parrington, they know XJs inside out. They also paint cars and do all bodywork. They actually have a separate company now. They call themselves Painting Classic Cars, and they're actually going to do the work. And this is going down in February, and like with the Espada, you're going to follow the whole thing as we completely strip this down, redo the body, and then paint it the colour, which is undecided at the moment. We haven't chosen the colour. I sort of know where I'm going to go with it, I think, but I don't know how much more to do with it. Do I change the wheels? I looked at doing a Steed replica, but I didn't like the actual kit, the body kit that you put on it. It looked a bit clumsy. I like the pure William Lyons look of the car, so we're going to preserve that, and I can't wait to get going on that and just see what it looks like at the finish. The Rolls-Royce is also having a bit of work. Much as we love it, it is a bit tatty under the waterline. It's sort of under here, there's bits missing, there's bits of tape. And I could go out and buy a much better example of Rolls-Royce, but it won't be the Arctic Rolls, the Rolls that took me to the Arctic Circle and into those Northern Lights. It's the most memorable trip I've ever done, and I sort of want it in the garage. Every time I come through the door and you see that, you smile, don't you really? So there you go. That is a roundup of what we spent in 2020 and what we're planning in 2021. I'm going to do another video also, just a review of what happened in 2020, and actually go into some of the numbers on YouTube, because analytics on YouTube are off the scale. But hope you enjoyed this roundup of the running of Harry's garage and all the cars involved with it. If you have, well, please keep watching, keep subscribing. More videos coming along very soon.